Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show, by any host, or by any guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before you begin any new diet, exercise, or training program. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to Healing Ties on the Whole Care Network. On Healing Ties, we're creating a life to love after caregiving ends by sharing stories and resources and being with awesome people like you. Now that caregiving has ended, let the Healing Ties begin. Here's your host, Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy.
Well, greetings everyone. It is Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy, for another episode of Healing Ties. Thanks for joining us today. Certainly want to send a hello and a shout out to all of our listeners in the UK on ukhealthradio.com. Thanks for your support of the show, and actually thank everybody for listening in. And if you have a topic or an idea for a future podcast on Healing Ties or the Whole Care Network, shoot me an email at wecare@wholecarenetwork.com. That's wecare@wholecarenetwork.com. We've had a little bit of a slow summer, which is okay because we can't be doing podcasts 24/7, but we've got some new and exciting shows starting in the fall. So just check into our website at thewholecarenetwork.com. You'll see some new shows that are coming up in September, and plus we've got some of our old favorites like A Happy Healthy Caregiver, Beyond Driving with Dignity, Life Unscripted. Oh goodness, we've got Ted, our favorite realtor in St. Louis, that's doing senior real estate specialist as well. And I'll actually be seeing Ted next week as I am trekking home for a visit to see my much older siblings. I hope they're listening today. I'll be in big trouble next week, that's for sure. But on to today. One of the great things about doing these podcasts and connecting with people all across the country is immediately when you get a message from somebody and you may not know them, but you read a little bit about their story and you know that you're just going to connect. And I know this conversation today is going to be just like that. Janet Fouts is a mindfulness and emotional intelligence coach, best-selling author, speaker, corporate trainer, and CEO of the Tattoo Digital Media, a Silicon Valley social media management agency. She began her caregiving journey 12 years ago when her partner was diagnosed with cancer, and goodness, can I relate to that. She's found new ways to deal with her stress and anxiety through mindfulness and is sharing her thoughts and her coaching through her new book, When Life Hits the Fan. So Janet, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so glad that you reached out, and goodness, we're going to have quite the lively conversation today because we're both passionate about caregiving. We connect with cancer caregiving for sure, but before we get into all that, why don't you let our listeners know, tell our listeners a little bit about you, your background, and we'll get into our discussion.
Well, let's see, where should I start? I've been a horse trainer, I've been a chef, and then I moved into technology and built a digital marketing agency here in the Valley. Started that about almost 25 years ago now. So I'm a digital native, as it were.
Oh, goodness.
And,
yeah.
Yeah. And it's been a really fun ride. But being an entrepreneur and being a caregiver at the same time is a little challenging. It really takes a lot of juggling. Yeah. But we've managed to do that. We've had our ups and downs, but, when my partner was diagnosed with cancer 12 years ago, as you said, we really struggled a lot and really trying to figure out how are we going to make all of this work. Living in Silicon Valley is not inexpensive. And so we hustled a lot. Then we learned a lot. And through that journey, I really discovered how mindfulness can help me be better at being a caregiver and also actually be a better person, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, I am. That's one of the areas that I'm so looking forward to chatting with you about is the mindfulness. And I guess just right off the bat, for somebody that would be a novice and they hear the word mindfulness, what would be a description that you would use to tune in somebody who's new to that concept?
Thank you for bringing that up because it does really freak people out because they think that, they imagine me sitting on a cushion and meditating all day. And well, sometimes I wish that was true. It isn't. Mindfulness is really just being here where you are right now and being fully present. That's really all it is. You can take that into self-care, and especially with the emotional intelligence that I bring to it, being more self-aware. There's no religion involved. There's no meditation if you don't want to do that. It's really about just being here instead of worrying about the past or worrying about the future.
Well, and that's paramount for life in general, but caregiving in specific, because what happened yesterday is we certainly can't do anything about. We have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring. But we're living in the moment, especially in our caregiving journey. It, even in those caregiving days that are challenging, when we're living in the moment and living in the day, it does make it just a tad bit easier.
Yes, indeed.
Give our listeners just kind of a visual, if you could do that on the radio. What a day in the life of your caregiving experience, especially, let's go back to especially right after the diagnosis. What a day like that looked like.
Right after the diagnosis, we were really in shock. This one hit us really hard. And as you probably read in the book, it was rather sudden. And all of a sudden we were thrown into, okay, how are we going to take care of this? What are the best ways to do it? And like most caregivers, especially in this day and age where we all go to Google, both of us dove into, okay, what are our options? How are we going to make this work? And the frenzy is really intense. Mm-hmm. You just get so over the top with the emotional, the psychological, and the physical trauma of everything that's going on. And, it can be quite overloading. Interestingly enough, with my personality type, I'm a doer and a fixer. So I was kind of energized by that. Sure. Because I had a job now. This is my job. This is what I'm going to do. And that felt really, I wouldn't say really great because it's a negative thing, but it felt really good to have the ability to help, to be able to do something or anything. At the same time, a lot of frustration with the things that I'd love to do and I can't do because I can't fix her.
Oh, goodness. We find out early on in our caregiving experience that our caregiving cape is limited, and there's just not, we think we can do everything, but we can't. It just takes a while for us to learn that as we're in the middle of it. But goodness, you also hit on something that I think I asked just about every one of my guests, and I think I already know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I've yet to meet one person that has caregiving on their bucket list of things that they plan to do in life. Because it just happens. No. Suddenly you're a caregiver.
The thing is as someone who's naturally a fixer, I've always been, if somebody has something wrong, I want to fix it. Right. So in some ways I kind of set myself up for this, but not at this level for sure.
I think when we get into the nitty gritty of it and the day to day, it does become burdensome isn't really the right word, but it's what immediately came to my mind, because now 4 years past my caregiving experience, I look at those days that were difficult and realize, the good days far outweighed the bad days. The bad days were just more intense, and that's why having the mindfulness. Goodness, as I thought about this in preparing for our chat today, how I would have liked to have been able to go back and just be able to be centered on some of those bad days.
Yeah, and it isn't, like as you said, it isn't just the bad days. There are good things that happen. There are good days. And it's very easy for us to get locked into, oh, this is so awful, and then never give ourselves any window of peace or joy or love, and just lock that out because we're so busy being miserable. And that's not helping anyone.
Right.
We need to find ways to really be more self-aware and find those moments that we can share together, particularly when we're looking at a situation where the person that we love may be in mortal struggle.
Right.
Then don't they deserve a little bit of joy?
Exactly.
But sometimes we can't get there.
Well, and I think a lot of that reason is because we're not living in the moment. We're projecting what's going to happen down the road when we really don't know. And that's why your thoughts on mindfulness and being present into the day, I think, is just it's important for especially our listeners. And I mean, you and your partner are 12 years into your caregiving experience. That says a lot about the mindfulness that the two of you have had in order to withstand.
Oh, thank you. Let me just say, it took us a long time to get there.
It doesn't happen overnight.
It did not happen overnight. And honestly, it really, for me, the journey to mindfulness came from just absolute deep, darkest depression I've ever been in my life. Seeing that, getting stuck in that place where I couldn't see anything good. And I had to get out of it. And I tried a lot of things before I finally came upon an MBSR course, a mindfulness-based stress reduction course, and started to see some light at the end of the tunnel, as it were.
So could you talk a little bit about that? What was what was the epiphany of that course that where you saw yourself and was ready to step out of your I was going to say
depression, maybe.
Depression. That's a better word than minutiae that was coming to my mind.
Yeah. Well, we do get into this pit and we kind of stay there because we don't know what else to do. And when I took this mindfulness course, I realized that I was really being obsessed by it. And that, there's nothing I can do about the future. And I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I can only know what's happening in this moment right now. And if I can stay in this moment, I can find things, I can look around, I can look out my window right now and see flowers outside. I can see birds, I can see the sun and the sky and be happy for that. And that's okay. And that was something that was difficult for me to come by. I'd gotten myself into a place where I felt guilty if I was happy.
Oh, yes.
And that's not helpful. It's not helpful to me. It's not helpful to her. It's not helpful to the people I work with. It was very ugly. And seeing that and realizing that, that was my epiphany. Wow, I can do this.
That's your aha moment. Goodness. And I guess that's a really great way to segue into your book and why. Tell us why you wrote the book and what having this in paper, writing this out for you, what has that done for you?
Well, I wrote the book because I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I went through to get to the point where they realize that, there is still life. Life is going on. And we have the right, and so does our loved one, to be happy. I wanted to show people the things that I had learned and to really bring that forward. And I interviewed about 75 people for the book and got their stories as well, so that it wasn't just my story. I bring several stories into the book of people with all kinds of different issues, Crohn's disease and Alzheimer's and more cancer, because there's always going to be more cancer.
Right.
And, really dug into what their issues were and tried to help them too. And I found since that every single person I tell about the book has a story to tell me, and they needed to tell that story. And that was a very important thing for them too. So the book kind of came out of a desire not to feel alone in what I was doing.
Right.
And then it came from a desire to really help people and let them know that they have agency. They don't have to be stuck.
Well, goodness, we hadn't even touched on this, but we connect 100% there, because I firmly believe it's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to combat a common cause. And when we share our stories, as comfortable as you can, not everybody is as comfortable sharing their story for a lot of reasons, but there's usually answers for people in somebody else's story.
Yes.
And there's comfort there. And I do believe that the best information and referral comes from one caregiver to another. That's not to discredit anybody, any organizations or businesses that are doing great work in the caregiving sphere. But when you can talk to another caregiver who's been down that road, who's been in that journey, and can share some of your personal knowledge, I think that's really the best resources you come up with.
Yeah, I think so too, because there's that commonality that you don't have in, any kind of, when I went to therapy, for example, that was not a good thing for me. And it simply didn't address what I needed.
Right.
And what I needed was to realize that I wasn't alone, that it wasn't all my fault.
Oh.
There's a lot of self-blame and self-anger that goes on that is totally nuts, but you do it anyway.
If I could have done this one thing differently, it had been better. That does enter into our minds, because we do want the best for the person that we're caring for, and sometimes we forget that we are doing our best. And I think that's another important part of this, is what you're doing, is reminding people that, through mindfulness, you are connected to the day, and you're doing the best that you can.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the other issues that that caregivers find themselves dealing with, that I think would be where mindfulness would be a big help, is isolation. I'd be interested to hear your feedback on this. I know for me personally that isolation started for us 6 months before Richard made his life transition, and that lingered on for isolation lingered on for a couple of years after Richard had died, and you think you're doing okay, but in essence you're really not, and you kind of forget to connect in with others.
Yeah, I really hear that, and I do understand that feeling that people they just want to turn inside, and at the same time they're not doing it for self-care. It's because they're kind of holding that wound. Mm-hmm. And with the story of your partner, there's a weird cycle to grief that I've come to understand a little bit more about. And that, you think, okay, I'm up today, I'm walking around, I'm smiling at people, I'm okay. Oh, wait, I'm not okay. Or it can go on for years. It's really a very odd thing, because I saw a graphic about this the other day, and I will find it for you, but it's really displays the cycles of grief and how it just goes in like a biorhythmic cycle, and you don't always know when it's going to hit, and you kind of insulate yourself from that. But by doing that, you're you're locking yourself in a box, and you've got to get out of that box. You've got to talk to someone. You've got to find someone that you can have conversations with.
And it's so important to feel safe when you're having those conversations. And that, for me, that's why when we talk about caregiving, I just believe that in caregiving, there's no gender, there's no orientation, there's no economic boundaries. Caregiving impacts everybody. And when you can sit and have a conversation with somebody who's been through it, like you and I are having today, there's that sense of comfort that comes in, and that mind. See, that word just popped right out of my mind. That mindfulness that that you can experience with another person.
Yeah, that coming together with someone who has been there is really important. And people who haven't been there yet, and I say yet because we will all be there at some point, can't fully understand. And it's interesting that in talking to people for the book, it doesn't matter what you're caring for someone for, what that specific illness or disease is. We all have that same experience as caregivers of wanting to give care. And there's a lot of commonalities that we're kind of, I don't know how to put it. It made me feel better.
Well, it's that instant connection. And for instance, I think you'll be able to get in touch with this. I have not, dementia, Alzheimer's was not a part of our caregiving experience. But when I talk to a caregiver that is dealing with that, I see and understand a lot of the same issues, personal issues that come up in the journey. They're very similar, even though the care itself is going to be different. And I think that's another reason why we all connect so well.
Yes, and you said that very well. Thank you.
So let's get back to the book. Goodness, I want to learn more about the book, the stories. How do I want to ask this politely? How did you get people to tell their story, I guess, is what I want to say.
It's amazingly easy.
Yes, it is. It is easy to get people to tell their story. So
I have to say that I have never mentioned the book to anyone who didn't have a story to tell me. Mm-hmm. I can say they'll say, what are you doing? And I'll say, I'm working on this book about caregiving. Oh, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my uncle, my neighbor. Mm-hmm. We all have stories. And even the people that I didn't ask to tell me their stories would stop, sit down, and just tell me their entire story. It just poured from their hearts, because it meant so much to them to be able to tell someone the story, right, who would really listen and not try to fix them and not try to tell them what they did was right or wrong or judge them in any way, but to just listen without judgment. And if anyone in your audience knows someone who's a caregiver and they can just say, I just want to listen, that will be the greatest gift that you could give them.
Oh, goodness. We're connecting again, because there's a part of communication that often gets forgotten about, and that's listening skills. Mm-hmm. And sometimes in the midst of caregiving, and just in the midst of life, we just need somebody to sit and listen with us, listen to us. Some of the best conversations people have are at our kitchen table, just talking about things that we're passionate about, just letting me tell my story for the day. Let me share what happened with you today. And there's comfort there.
Oh, there definitely is. And it's very common for people to start to hear a story like that and immediately launch into, oh, well, my cousin has cancer and this is what they did. Right. Or, yeah, I know that you're really struggling. And what about me? What did you, I don't know where my dog is, whatever it is. Right. It makes some people really uncomfortable to actually listen to the story. But if they can just hold on, just be quiet and let people talk, then you'll see what good it does them, and it will feel good for you too.
That's very well said and quite beautiful. So if there was a soon-to-be caregiver out in the audience listening, which we all know that we're all going to be a caregiver sooner or later, what would you say to somebody that's new about the importance of practicing self-care while you're in the middle of caregiving?
Well, the most important thing is that if you're not caring for yourself, you can't fully care for others. When you get so wrapped up in getting on that hamster wheel and staying there because you got to fix it, it's not really going to help you. What you need to do is step back and take a look at your place and the situation that you're in and find the best way that you can help that person. And, while we're still on the topic of listening, listen to the person you're caring for.
Right.
Listen to their doctors. I recant a story in the book where I wasn't listening to anybody. I wanted this fixed and I wanted it fixed now. Yes. And it was not a good place. I'm amazed how I was a total harpy, and I wanted things fixed for her, and I wasn't going to move the earth, and I did. They fixed it, but I could have done it so much better if I would have just taken a breath. The most powerful tool in our body is the breath.
Is taking a breath.
Yeah.
The ironic thing about self-care, and it's confusing at times because the first job of a caregiver is to take care of themselves. But with that, who's most concerned about you taking care of yourself is the person that you're caring for, because whether it's said or left unsaid, it's known. The person who you're caring for knows in most cases that this is stressful for you as well as them. And they also know that you're their lifeline and they want you to take good care of yourself.
Yes, and they also have a level of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they express that or not, I know a lot of my people that I talked to said, "Oh, she didn't even care that I did all this." That's not true.
That's not true.
They do, but they may not know how to show it. But yeah, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't really take good care of them. And the more stressed you get, the shorter you are, the more likely you are to do something that, could be harmful.
Right. To both yourself and the person that you're caring for. Yeah.
Correct.
One of the great lessons that Richard taught me in the middle of our caregiving experience, and some days I was better at remembering this than others, and I don't think I've shared this for a while, but oftentimes in our discussions with the person that we're caring for, whether it's a very, very serious discussion or a lighthearted discussion, or when there's a bit of angst and anger, because it's not all peaches and roses. But Richard had said to me, sometimes it's the disease talking, not me.
Mm.
And I think that as we sit back and we look at all of our caregiving experiences and journeys, oftentimes when we're lashing out, when the person that we're caring for lashes out at us, it is the disease talking. And when we're not listening, we're not practicing self-care and mindfulness. I just put that together.
Yay.
Yeah. Where were you 4 years ago when I was in the middle of caregiving? No.
It is a beautiful thing when we have these epiphanies, and it is often disease talking, or in my case, it's often the meds talking. The medications, we talked about this a little earlier, but the medications related to a lot of diseases, not just cancer, are so harmful and mess up everything so badly that you can't always think that it's that person. Sometimes it's the side effects of the medication.
Very much so. Very much so. I could talk to you for hours, Janet. Goodness. And the 30 minutes is already up. Good. Okay, I'd like to invite you back to have for further discussions on your book and the great work that you're doing out in California.
I would love that.
So let our listeners know how they can find your book, all the pertinent information about you, contact, and we'll certainly get this up on our follow-up blog post as well. But this is all the microphone is all yours.
Thank you. Well, people can find me on my website at janetfouts.com. I'm all across social media as J Fouts, pretty much everywhere. Owning a social media agency allows you to do these things. Yes. I also have a podcast that you can find pretty much everywhere called Mindful Social. And they can get the book through Amazon right now in ebook and paperback, but I recorded the audiobook last week and it's supposed to go live sometime this week. So I'm very excited about that because that's fun.
That is awesome. That's new information. I'm going to have to, that is terrific. Goodness.
Yeah, it was fun.
That's another discussion offline because that's something. I'm digressing here, but that's okay. We can do that on podcast.
There you can.
But Janet, your book, When Life Hits the Fan, a meaningful guide to caring for yourself while caring for others, is helping caregivers see how they can be their best selves. And through the work that you are doing, you are certainly someone who's creating healing ties all around us. I can't thank you enough for joining me today, and I think we've got a new friendship going on here. This is terrific.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, and it's been wonderful talking to you.
Likewise. Okay, goodness, what a great visit today. But sometimes they all have to come to an end, and unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. But as you know, I'm Chris McClellan, the Bowtie Guy. I'm creating a life to live after caregiving ends through radio, writing, travel, advocacy, and being with awesome people like Janet Fouts. Healing Ties is a part of the Whole Care Network. Check us out online at thewholecarenetwork.com. We'll see you for another episode of Healing Ties real soon. Bye-bye.